But the twist? Stay tuned, because this is the story of how my wedding day disaster became my ultimate triumph. Their petals scattered along the aisle like fallen snow. The string quartet played softly as 200 guests watched me walk toward what I thought was my future. My heart hammered against my ribs, but it was the good kind of racing. Pure joy. The pastor opened his worn Bible. We are gathered here today to witness the union of Colton James Wellington and Anna Rose Derrick in holy matrimony. Do you, Colton, take Anna to be your lawfully wedded wife? I do. His voice cracked slightly. The pastor turned to me. And wait. Every head turned. Gasps rippled through the congregation like a wave hitting shore. My maid of honor, Karen Oscar, stood from her place at the altar. The woman I'd known since kindergarten. She wore the dusty rose bridesmaid dress we picked out together. But her face was twisted with something ugly I'd never seen before. The whispers started immediately, a low buzz that grew louder by the second. Karen, what are you doing? She lifted her chin, defiant. I'm pregnant, Anna, and Colton is the father. The gasps turned into shocked exclamations. The string quartet's music faltered and died. Colton went pale as paper. Karen, don't. Don't what? She stepped closer, her voice getting stronger, more vicious. Don't tell her how you've been coming to my apartment for months. Don't tell her how you said you were having second thoughts about the wedding. Don't tell her how you whispered that you loved me while we enough. You're the consolation prize. But now that we're having a baby, she placed her hand on her still flat stomach. I looked at Colton. Sweat beaded on his forehead. He couldn't even look me in the eye. That's when I smiled. It wasn't a happy smile. With one swipe, I activated the Bluetooth speaker system we'd installed for the reception music. Karen's face went from triumphant to confused to absolutely terrified as her own voice filled the church through the speakers. The pregnancy could be any of theirs, but Colton makes the most money. Karen's laugh echoed off the church walls as she bragged to someone on the phone about her plan, about how she'd been manipulating all three men, about how she planned to take Anna's pathetic little prince for everything he's worth. Karen dropped to her knees right there at the altar, her face white as the communion wafer. Anna, I can explain. Oh, you'll have plenty of time to explain, I said calmly, to the police, to the DNA lab, and to my lawyer. I looked out at the stunned congregation. I'm a pediatric nurse at Children's Hospital, the kind of woman who believes in happily ever after because I spend my days helping kids believe in miracles. At 28, I had everything mapped out. Marry Colton, buy a house with a white picket fence, have 2 kids and a golden retriever named Buster. Colton Wellington was everything I thought I wanted. Old money, good breeding, the kind of man who looked perfect in family Christmas photos. He was the best man. He spilled red wine on my dress during the reception, then insisted on paying for the dry cleaning. One coffee date turned into dinner. Dinner turned into weekend trips. He's perfect for you, Mija. Dad called him Joe and took him fishing. But Karen Oscar loved him most of all. Karen and I had been inseparable since we were 5 years old. Same schools, same classes, same dreams of moving to New York to become fashion designers. Call Karen. Good news to share. Call Karen. I'm so happy for you. She'd squealed over FaceTime, her face pixelated, but her smile bright. She threw me the most elaborate engagement party. She spent hours with me picking out bridesmaid dresses, arguing with the florist, tasting cake samples until we were sick. I can't wait to stand beside you on your big day, she said during one of our planning sessions. We've been sisters since kindergarten. I laughed. Yet being the operative word. She'd win. Maybe your wedding will inspire Angelo to finally propose. Angelo Kim was her boyfriend of 2 years. I always thought they'd get married before Colton and me. Looking back, I should have noticed the signs, like how Karen always found reasons to drop by our apartment when Colton was home. How my phone would buzz with texts from her at odd hours. Just thinking about you at 2 a.m. Right in the middle of my shift when she knew I couldn't respond. I can't wait to marry you, Anna. Ones that my trusting heart chose to interpret as pre-wedding jitters. Small amounts, nothing suspicious individually. Coffee shops I'd never been to. A jewelry store purchase he claimed was a surprise for later. 3 weeks before the wedding, I found a pregnancy test in our bathroom trash. Maybe Sydney left it when she visited last weekend. She laughed. Girl, I'm still not even dating anyone. Seriously. It made no sense, but I believed it because I wanted to. When my aunt asked if she was feeling all right, she snapped. I'm fine. He kept staring at Karen when he thought no one was looking. When she got up to use the bathroom, he found an excuse to step outside for fresh air. 2 minutes later. You okay, bro? Tristan asked Colton during the toasts. Wedding nerves. Colton laughed. But Tristan didn't know how it was. He'd never been married. None of us had except my parents and aunts and uncles who'd been together so long they made love look easy. That night, Colton and I followed tradition and stayed apart. Karen was the last to leave after helping me hang my dress. Anna, she said at the door, her voice strange. You know I love you, right? She hugged me tighter than usual. Tomorrow is going to change everything. I hope so. Good butterflies, though. The kind that come with Christmas morning excitement and first day of vacation anticipation. The house was already buzzing with activity. Sydney was setting up the coffee station with military precision. The phone rang constantly with last-minute vendor confirmations and relatives asking for directions. Morning, beautiful bride. Triple shot vanilla latte for the blushing bride because we need you caffeinated and gorgeous. She looked perfect as always. Hair already done in loose Hollywood waves. Makeup flawless. You're an angel, I said, accepting the coffee gratefully. I was so nervous I forgot to eat breakfast. That's what maids of honor are for. He kissed my cheek to make sure you don't faint at the altar from low blood sugar. The morning flew by in a blur of hair appointments, makeup touch-ups, and constant photo-taking. Getting into my dress, a princess-style ball gown with hand-sewn pearls that took my mother and me 8 months to save for. Mija, you look like a queen, he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. Karen helped with everything. She fluffed my train, fixed my veil when it got caught on doorways, touched up my lipstick between photos, the perfect maid of honor, my best friend since forever. But looking back, she was also checking her phone constantly. Quick glances when she thought no one was looking. At one point, Sydney caught her. Angelo's at the golf course with the guys. Just work stuff. My sister had built-in __ detectors that could spot lies from space. We arrived at the church at 2 p.m. for photos before the 4:00 p.m. ceremony. Every shot was perfect. Protocol said we weren't supposed to see each other before the ceremony, but honestly, I was dying to catch a glimpse. You know how his eyes get watery around all these flowers? She nodded quickly. Of course, back in 5 minutes. I asked. Colton says he can't wait to see you. The ceremony was supposed to start at 4:00 p.m. Colton's family took up the right side of the church. Old money elegance in navy blue and pearls. Ladies, it's showtime. My bridesmaids lined up. My college roommate Ariel, my cousin Anna, Colton's sister Rebecca, and Karen at the front as maid of honor. They all looked beautiful in their dusty rose dresses, carrying bouquets of white roses and baby's breath. Ready, Mija? I took a deep breath, inhaling the scent of roses and old wood and the faint smell of my grandmother's prayer candles. Ready? The string quartet began the wedding march. This was it, the moment I dreamed about since I was a little girl playing dress-up in my mother's wedding gown. I walked down that aisle feeling like I was floating. The church was perfect. The music was perfect. I'm pregnant, Anna. And Colton is the father. The words hung in the air like poison gas. I felt the entire congregation inhale collectively, then hold their breath, waiting to see what would happen next. The church, which had been warm and golden just seconds before, now felt cold and stark. Every eye was on me, watching for my reaction, waiting for me to crumble. But I didn't crumble. Clarity sharp as a blade. Colton finally found his voice. "Karen, please don't do this. Not here." She stepped closer to him, her voice growing stronger, more confident. "I'm sorry, everyone." My father's face had gone from confused to murderous. "Let Anna handle this." But then her chin lifted and the mask of righteous indignation slid back into place. "I didn't plan for this to happen," she continued, her voice carrying to every corner of the church. "Colton and I, we fought it for months. But sometimes love isn't enough to stop." The guests were starting to murmur now. Whispers rippling through the pews like wind through wheat. The audacity. "Explain what?" Karen interrupted. My brother Tristan shot to his feet like a rocket, his face twisted with rage. He started toward the altar, but Sydney and my cousin Roberto grabbed his arms, holding him back. "Let me go," Tristan snarled. "I'm going to deal with him. I'm going to kill both of them." Her eyes were bright, almost fevered. "Anna, you have to understand. I never meant for this to happen." She placed both hands on her stomach in a gesture that was clearly meant to be protective and maternal. "And Colton deserves to be with the woman he truly wants." But she was on a roll now, drunk on the attention and drama. Worse. Living a lie is what made this worse. She gestured toward me. "Look at her standing there in that ridiculous dress, thinking she's about to marry the love of her life." That's when something snapped inside my chest. Not broke, snapped. Like a rubber band that had been stretched too tight. "Oh honey," I said, my voice soft and sweet as honey. Her confident expression wavered. With one smooth motion, I activated the Bluetooth connection to the church's sound system, the same system we'd installed to play our wedding music. I pressed play. Anna's so pathetically naive, it's almost sad. She actually thinks Colton loves her. Meanwhile, he can't keep his hands off me every time she works late shifts. Last week, he said he wishes he'd proposed to me instead. He looked like he might actually vomit right there at the altar. But Karen's voice continued bright with laughter. "God, I can't wait to see her face when I tell everyone." The church was dead silent except for the sound of my grandmother's rosary beads clicking faster and faster as she prayed. The recording kept playing. "Who's going to believe his word over mine?" "Anna," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I was drunk when I said those things." I corrected, my voice still amplified by the speakers. "Anything you'd like to add, honey, or should I play the recording of you calling me a boring, clingy __ while you were screwing my best friend in the apartment I pay half the rent for?" He opened his mouth, then closed it. No words came out. I looked out at the congregation. "Ladies and gentlemen," I said calmly, "I apologize for the interruption, but as you can see, we have a slight issue with the groom and my maid of honor." My father finally broke free from my mother's grip and stood up. "No, Papa." And I did. For the first time in months, maybe years, I felt completely in control. "I've known about you two for months." The congregation rustled like leaves in wind. Her face streaked with mascara tears. "Shall we start with the pictures my neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, took of you leaving our apartment building at 6 a.m. on February 14th? I held up the phone so everyone could see the clear photo of Karen doing the walk of shame in yesterday's clothes. Or maybe we should discuss the credit card charges, Colton. I turned to my groom, who looked like he wanted to evaporate. The ones you thought I wouldn't notice because they were small amounts. The coffee shop where you meet Karen every Tuesday. Karen's hand flew to her throat where a delicate chain with a tiny diamond pendant caught the church light. Except the conference was virtual, wasn't it, Colton? And you were actually 20 minutes away at the Marriott downtown with my maid of honor. Colton finally found his voice. Anna, I can explain. How you used my engagement ring money from my grandmother to cover her rent when she got fired from her marketing job. How you promised her you'd call off our wedding after the honeymoon so she could save face. Someone behind me said Jesus Christ loudly enough to make Father Rodriguez wheeze. But I wasn't done. Or maybe I said, my voice getting dangerously soft. We should discuss the real reason Karen is here making this dramatic announcement. See, here's the thing about my best friend since kindergarten. I told the congregation like I was giving a toast at a dinner party. Always wanted what I had. But this time, she bit off more than she could chew. The guests were so quiet I could hear the silk train sliding across the marble floor. Her face went ashen. The one that proved the baby isn't Colton's. The church exploded. Someone's grandmother started praying loudly in Spanish. Colton stared at Karen like he'd never seen her before. What is she talking about? You're lying. Am I? I pulled out a folded paper from inside my bouquet. Paternity test results dated last Tuesday. 24% probability that Colton Wellington is the father, which for those of you who aren't familiar with genetics means definitely not the father. James Wellington, 2 years younger than Colton and infinitely more charming, had gone pale as communion bread. James cleared his throat. It's not. A few times. James, you told me you loved me. You said you were going to leave, Rachel. She shot to her feet like a rocket. What did you just say? But I wasn't finished with my revelations. Michael Foster, Colton's best man, was standing at the far end of the groomsmen line. At the mention of his name, he went rigid. No, Karen whispered. Anna, please don't. Also a possible father. Also promised he'd leave his wife for you. Also completely unaware that you were playing musical beds with the entire wedding party. Michael's wife, seated with the other spouses, let out a sound like a wounded animal. She turned to stare at her husband with murder in her eyes. Rachel was screaming at James. Michael's wife was crying while her sister held her back from charging the altar. How did you find out? I'm a nurse. I know how to collect evidence without people noticing. Hair from your brush when I was over for planning sessions. Coffee cups from the trash. Colton stared at me like I was a stranger. Oh, honey. I laughed and it wasn't a nice sound. I gestured to the chaos around us. Karen was crying so hard she could barely speak. I'm so sorry. I turned back to the congregation, many of whom were now standing and talking loudly among themselves. Ladies and gentlemen, I called out, my voice cutting through the noise. I apologized for turning my wedding into an episode of Jerry Springer. But I figured if I was going to be humiliated, I might as well make sure I wasn't the only one. What can we do? Colton looked confused. Because, I said calmly, handing my rings to my father. Embezzlement is a crime. So is fraud. The credit cards you opened in my name, I explained patiently. The $50,000 you stole from my inheritance account to pay for your shopping sprees and abortion fees. Abortion fees? I nodded. Anna, please. I'll pay it back. Too late, I said, checking my phone. Rachel was still screaming at James, who was trying to push past the other groomsmen to escape. Michael's wife had broken free from her sister and was now advancing on Michael with her purse raised like a weapon. You stole from me, Colton. You forged my signature on loan documents and you helped her. I pointed at Karen, who was still kneeling on the altar floor, commit identity theft. They didn't. I got your message. I nodded toward Karen and Colton. Karen Oscar and Colton Wellington. All the evidence is in the folder I sent to your office yesterday. Karen looked up at me with mascara streaming down her face. Yesterday? You sent evidence yesterday? I sent it last week. I hoped I was wrong, I said simply. Right up until this morning, I hoped I'd wake up and discover this was all some horrible nightmare, that my best friend since kindergarten and the man I loved wouldn't actually betray me this completely. Colton Wellington, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit fraud and embezzlement. No, wait. Karen scrambled to her feet as the officer pulled out handcuffs. Anna, please. I'll pay you back every penny. I asked coldly. $50,000. $50,000 more. So that money is safe. Crying, apologizing, claiming she was manipulated by Colton, but then she started trying to negotiate a deal, which pretty much eliminated any sympathy we might have had. Even handcuffed in a police station, Karen was still trying to manipulate everyone around her. How long will they be in jail? That depends on the DA and how much they cooperate. Probably for several years. Several years. I tried to process that. The thought didn't make me sad. When I first came to you 3 months ago with my suspicions, you didn't seem surprised, like you'd seen this kind of thing before. He sighed. Unfortunately, Anna, I see this more often than you'd think. Prepared. The evidence you collected was better than what most of our detectives gather. I'm a nurse, I said. Simply. You're also incredibly brave. You chose justice instead. Was that what this was? Felt more like survival. After I hung up, I walked back toward the celebration. I was wondering if I could ask you a few questions about what happened today. What video? He held up her phone, showing me a TikTok with over 5 million views. This woman is an icon. Plot twist. This is the best wedding ever. Our viewers are very interested in your story. I looked at her, then at the cameras, then at my family celebrating my freedom instead of mourning my humiliation. I said, smiling. This is my family's time. Tomorrow, I'll tell you everything. That would be incredible. This story has all the elements: betrayal, revenge, justice, courage. People are calling you a hero. Life was weird. The reception venue was mostly empty except for family helping clean up. Instead, I'd spent the evening dancing with my father, my brother, my grandfather, and anyone else who asked. I turned to see Sydney walking toward me with 2 glasses of champagne. Thanks. Anything? I was quiet for a moment. Honestly, I had suspicions for about 6 months. Little things. The way they looked at each other when they thought no one was watching. How Karen always found excuses to be around him. Why didn't you say anything? As I wasn't sure, she nodded. I understand. Do you think I did the right thing? The whole public humiliation thing, the arrests. Sydney stared at me like I'd grown a second head. They lied to you. And they were planning to let you marry him and spend your honeymoon not knowing that your husband was in love with your best friend and carrying her baby. James's baby. The point is they deserved everything they got. You think so? Or when she okay, I laughed. I get it. I should have seen the patterns earlier. Love makes us blind to patterns, Sydney said gently. Both kinds of love, romantic love and friend love. So, what happens now? Well, according to Detective Rivera, they'll both probably go to prison. What do you do now? I thought about it. All of that was gone. I said, I haven't been single since I was 25. I don't even remember what I like to do in my spare time. Things you like that you never got to do because you were too busy being the perfect girlfriend. I want to travel, I said suddenly. I've got money saved up now that I'm not spending it on a wedding or a cheating boyfriend. Maybe I'll take that trip. Do it. And I want to go back to school, get my master's degree in pediatric nursing, maybe specialize in trauma care. You'd be amazing at that. And I want to learn how to salsa dance. Real salsa, not the basic steps Colton and I learned for our wedding dance. Sydney grinned. Now you're talking. What else? A big one. I want to be someone I'm proud of. Not someone who lets people walk all over her because she's nice. You are someone to be proud of. That wasn't the action of someone who lets people walk all over her. Saw your video online. I showed the text to Sydney. My phone buzzed again. Then again, message after message from strangers who'd seen the video and wanted to share their own stories of betrayal and revenge or to tell me how my courage had inspired them to stand up for themselves. I just wanted justice for myself. I never expected to become a symbol of female empowerment. Sydney laughed. We finished our champagne as the cleanup crew finished packing up the reception decorations. Soon the venue would be ready for the next event, the next celebration, the next beginning. This place that was supposed to hold the memories of the happiest day of my life. Actually, I said, I don't want to go home. Not to the apartment I shared with Colton anyway. Can I stay with you tonight? Of course. Sounds perfect. She answered it, then held the phone out to me with a strange expression. It's for you. I stared at the phone. Ellen as in Ellen DeGeneres. Sydney nodded. I took the phone with shaking hands. We'd love to have you on the show next week to talk about what happened today. Ellen DeGeneres wanted to celebrate my courage. I looked at Sydney who was grinning like a maniac. I said into the phone. I'd love to. Anna Derrick, you are about to be the most famous revenge bride in history. Is that a good thing? Are you kidding? You're about to become every woman's hero. You're going to inspire millions of people to stand up for themselves. You're going to change my life completely. Exactly. I thought about Colton and Karen probably sitting in jail cells right now. Realizing that their betrayal had consequences they never imagined. I thought about all the messages from strangers who said my story had inspired them. I've never been more ready for anything in my life. And as we walked to the car, I couldn't help but smile. Instead, I was ending the day as Anna Derrick, the woman who refused to be played, who chose justice over comfort, who turned her worst day into her most powerful moment. They thought they ruined me on my wedding day. I'm writing this from a cozy cafe in Florence, Italy, a gorgeous city I only ever dreamed of seeing. After the wedding that wasn't, my story went viral in a way I never imagined. So I packed a bag, booked a one-way ticket and decided to find myself again, one plate of pasta at a time. Colton and Karen were sentenced to 4 years in prison for fraud and embezzlement. He's trying to be a father, and his fiancée, Rachel, surprisingly, is standing by him. I'm too busy finding my own. I'm finishing my master's in pediatric nursing online, between museum visits and attempts to speak Italian. I adopted the scruffiest, most lovable dog from a shelter here, and I named him Buster, just like I always planned. The woman told me that watching my video gave her the courage to leave a toxic relationship. It's about rebirth. In fact, it's just getting started. If you believe in second chances and finding strength in the craziest moments, hit that subscribe button.